Shyam, does the ambassador presentation? Itu background.
Thank you everybody for joining today's webinar. Thank you Pak Suryo Pratomo for joining us today also. Thank you to all the speakers. A very good afternoon to all participants and distinguished speakers. I'm Syam, country head for Indonesia at Singapore Business Federation. And I'll be your host and moderator for today because Pak Syab couldn't attend for some personal reasons. To our Indonesian participant, Assalamualaikum, selamat siang, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Shalom O Swastu, Nama Budaya, salam kebajikan. Welcome to ASEAN FYIstival. Today webinar Explore Indonesia Potential Business Growth is brought to you by Global Connect SBF, the globalization initiative of Singapore Business Federation. On behalf of SBF, I would like to thank our principal partner, Convera, and advocacy partner, BIPO, for their strong support to the entire FYI Festival initiative for the second year. Thank you once again. Today, we are very honored to have one of our representatives joining us as a speaker. We look forward to their insightful sharing later. Next. For your information, this webinar is being recorded and may be shared on SBF social media channel. If you have any question during the presentation, please type into the question box in your Zoom control panel. We will address them during the Q&A session later. Now, I would like to share more about Global Connect SBF. In summary, with Global Connect SBF, Singapore businesses can learn with us about market, new customers, and free trade agreements, while learn with us through our dedicated digital space, established network, and hands-on advice and facilitation. And lastly, localize with us through our trusted relationship abroad to deepen your presence and secure your long-term sustainability in the market itself. Please scan the QR code to visit our GC at SBF for more details. And we will be here and glad to serve you and to facilitate your needs into the market itself. Next, we'll be running a GC poll. We seek your kind cooperation to participate in this poll. Maybe you can run the poll right now. So please, can you, for the participant, there's 2 questions. So please select your choice for your answer on this particular question, on this GC poll. Thank you so much. Okay, so today the program lineup, this will be our rundown for today's webinar. Now, allow me to give a short but hopefully meaningful welcome remarks. Over the years, Indonesia and Singapore have maintained a strong relationship through strong economic cooperation across a wide range of sectors. Indonesia has enjoyed steady economic growth over the last decade. It is even projected to become the world's 5th largest economy by 2030. The opportunities offered by the emerging countries seems to be outstanding and endless. Matter of fact, Indonesia is a country with a huge population of over 270 million. This large market becomes a strong attraction for many Singapore companies as they want to enter the market that can open huge sales opportunity. Today, this webinar allows us to hear from our competent speakers about the emerging sector in Indonesia. Not only that, we also have an insightful panel discussion at the end of this session. Today, we will cover Indonesia increasing opportunity on various sectors and how Singapore company can participate to the growth by capturing those opportunities. Without further ado, before we start with the presentation from the speakers, we will begin with His Excellency Suryo Pratomo to give a keynote address with his presentation. Over to you, Pak Suryo Pratomo.
Thank you, my handsome brothers. Bapak Hisamuddin Abu Bakar, Country Head of Indonesia Singapore Business Federation, Mr. Ferry Akbar Pasaribu, Deputy Assistant for Investment Strategy and Acceleration Policy, Coordinating Ministry for Maritime and Investment Affairs, Mr. Stephen Dooley, APEC Currency Strategist Convera, Mr. Kevin Ben Lawrence, Director International Pharmaceutical Federation Foundation, for Education and Research, and also my long friend, Mr. Soeb Kakda, President of Singapore Chamber of Commerce, Indonesia. A very good afternoon to all of you. It's my pleasure to join you at this webinar and to see your enthusiasm to explore Indonesia potential business growth. I should first thank the Singapore Business Federation, especially my friend, Mr. Sham, for inviting me to this webinar. Talking about the huge potential of Indonesia in 10 minutes will not be enough, but I will be manage them in 3 main topics. I will briefly present to you some progress Indonesia made until today and what we are expecting to be in the future, followed by some update information on what you need to know about doing business in Indonesia. In closing, allow me to encourage you to invest in Indonesia through investment potential and businesses opportunities. Distinguished webinar participants, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia is the largest economy in Southeast Asia. We are on the world emerging market and a target of business expansion over the last decade. Today, we are the 17th largest economy in the world by nominal GDP and the 7th largest economy in terms of purchasing power parity. Our population is 4th largest in the world, about 275 million in 2022. About 53% of the population in the cities produce nearly 74% of GDP. Labor force participation rate in Indonesia also increased to 68.08% in 2021 from 67.77% in 2020. According to Trade Economics, we have 55 million skilled workers. Indonesia economy grew 4.4% in second quarter of 2022. The trade balance also recorded a surplus for 27 consecutive months. And in the first half of 2020, the surplus was around 35 billion Singapore dollar. Our inflation rate is in the range of 4.9%, significantly lower than the average global inflation rate, around 7.5%. The investment sector is also an encouraging trend. Foreign direct investment has accelerated to a new record high monthly to around 16 billion Singapore dollar in the second quarter this year. This demonstrates Indonesia's robust economic recovery amid the global pandemic and recession threat. In this connection, Singapore has been the top foreign investor in Indonesia since 2014. Singapore investment in Indonesia reached $6.7 billion in the first semester this year, while the total investment last year was $9.4 billion. So I'm confident that this positive trend will continue, and we are at Embassy hope that in this year we are make a new record. The investment FDI from Singapore to Indonesia, it will be a double digit. Considering the acceleration of economic recovery in the two countries, so I'm really believe that we can achieve the goal that we have, that we want to reach. Distinguished participant, with an average growth target of 5.7% per year, Indonesia is targeting to become a high-income country by 2037 and the world's 5th largest economy by 2045. This is high growth would gradually increase the middle income class to about 70% of Indonesia population by 2045. To that end, strengthening the process of economic transformation to achieve the development goals of 2045 has become the focus in the context of achieving sustainable infrastructure, high human development, and better public services and welfare standards. To achieve the economic growth rate of around 6%, an investment that we are needs is around 35,212.4 trillion rupiah or 35,455.6 trillion rupiah is needed for 2020 to 2024 period. To meet this need, the government and state-owned enterprises will contribute around 8 until 10% respectively, where the rest will be recovered by the public and or private sectors. To meet this end, the Indonesia government continue to strive to create economic stability and an attractive investment climate for investors. This effort has received international recognition. In the last 5 years, Indonesia has also managed to improve the World Bank Ease of Doing Business rating from rank 106 in 2016 to 73 in 2020. In 2020, ease of doing business for Indonesia was 69.6 score. Going forward, even though the doing business report has been discontinued by the World Bank, the government of Indonesia remains focusing on structural reform by creating better business and investment regulation that refer to international best practices and focusing on system reform by implementing online single submission system with the risk-based approach. Another grand strategy made was the enactment of the Omnibus Law on Job Creation, that is Law number 11 year 2020. The law has streamlined the complex, onerous, and redundant regulation and red tape. This law consists of 15 chapters and 186 articles, with each restriction in 11 critical areas, including labor law, capital investment, business licensing, and corporate tax. Distinguished participants, when choosing a location for investment in Indonesia, Indonesia has a number of investment locations for you to take into consideration based on, for example, tax incentive, infrastructure and logistics, proximity to resources, labor cost, and skill level. Today, there are 19 special economic zones, 15 existing and 4 new, and 118 industrial estate, 4 free trade zone, 1,360 bond zone, and 91 bond logistics center in 131 locations. There are also 4 free trade zones and free port for a total area of 127,472 hectares, which are oriented for export activities. Business activities in this area will be given facilities in the form of entry and release of goods, taxation, custom, excise, immigration, prohibition, and restriction, and other facilities. To achieve our priority development plan, as stated in Indonesia 2020 to 2024 National Medium-Term Development Plan, there are 41 planned major projects. In addition, 6 priority sectors has been set for investment, namely labor-intensive export-oriented industry, renewable energy, infrastructure and mining industry, which can create more jobs and improve human capital and infrastructure development. The importance of these sectors are also reflected after Indonesia assumed its G20 presidency in 2022, adopting the theme Recover Together, Recover Stronger. Indonesia encouraged joint effort from world economic recovery. Inclusive, people-centered, environmentally friendly, and sustainable growth is the main commitment of Indonesia as the chair of G20. The three main pillars of Indonesia G20 2022 presidency are global health architectures, sustainable energy transition, and digital transformation. Distinguished participants, Indonesia look forward to expanding economic cooperation, securing inclusive growth for our economies and region in new and forward-looking areas: digital economy, clean and renewable energy and technology, advanced manufacturing, health services, and food security. Indonesia is the top 5 country found in the Asia Pacific with significant renewable energy capacity. This is mainly sourced from hydropower and geothermal plants that makes up 8% and 5% respectively. By 2025, Indonesia is expected to achieve the use of renewable energy by up to 23% as the national energy source. Here, while investing in Indonesia green energy sector offer a promising opportunity. Indonesia needs an investment of around $1 trillion to make the energy transition to clean energy. There are many investment options in Indonesia for the development of renewable energy from solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, and also underwater current of the sea, which make up 2/3 of Indonesia territory. Meanwhile, on digital economy, Indonesia offers extensive opportunities for foreign countries, including Singapore startup, technology and financial services firm and investor. Indonesia is one of the fastest growing markets for fintech in Asia, with a high level of digital adoption and rising level of affluence. This has given rise to opportunities for fintech company to provide digital financial services and to serve the rising middle class. Indonesia also offers a window of opportunity for technology company and financial services providers to explore partnership to serve the large unbanked population of individuals and SMEs in the vast territories of Indonesia. We also hope to see more fintech assist local micro, small, medium enterprises in their effort to get greater access to a wider market through e-commerce platform. Another area in the digital economy ecosystem that shows significant growth and many foreign business entities, particularly from Singapore, is on the establishment of new data center. Indonesia is preferred data center location in Southeast Asia, owing the strong connectivity, high internet penetration, and the presence of industrial area such as Cikarang and Karawang that offer better infrastructure, ample land, and electricity supply. Jakarta is the primary location for data center development in Indonesia, with 10 data center facilities contributing around 45% of the existing third-party data center capacity in Indonesia. Other locations witnessing investment including Bali, Java, East Kalimantan, North Sulawesi, and Sumatra, among others. The Indonesian government also provides tax incentive for data center development across the country. For instance, data center developer investing $7 million to $34 million in Indonesia will receive tax exemption of up to 50% for around 5 years. Distinguished participants, besides promoting closer economic cooperation through its presidency in the G20 this year, Indonesia also gearing to build a new capital city, Nusantara. Indonesia new capital is part of the massive transformation in Indonesia and will become a new locomotive for economic growth in Indonesia. Several foreign funds, including the United Arab Emirates, the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, Japan Bank for International Cooperation, and Canadian and Dutch pension fund, has expressed interest in investing partnership with Indonesia Investment Authority. The government of Indonesia will build Nusantara in stages until 2045. For the first stage, from 2022 to 2024, the government planning to build the central government area and the road access to the capital. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, let me reiterate that Indonesia is a land of ample and lucrative opportunity for foreigners, including Singaporean investors. Indonesia is your investment destination. Once again, my appreciation goes to SBF for organizing this webinar and also to all speakers today. Thank you for your sharing and insight and knowledge, which I hope will enlighten this webinar participant in Indonesia Matters and about prospect to invest in Indonesia. I particularly thank you all for your presence and participation in this webinar, which have contributed to our joint force to achieve stronger recovery of Indonesia and strengthen bilateral business and economic relationship between Indonesia and Singapore now in the year ahead. I wish you all an engaging and productive and fruitful session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, His Excellency Suryo Pratomo, for the keynote address. Very comprehensive and very insightful. And Singapore will continue to give strong support to achieve double-digit growth for the foreign direct investment into Indonesia. Thank you once again, Pak Suryo Pratomo. Thank you. Next, we're going to have Pak Ferry Akbar Pasaribu to share about renewable energy transition. Mr. Ferry, the time and place is yours.
Thank you, Pak Syam. Your Excellency, Ambassador Pratomo, nice to meet you again, Pak. It's an honor to be able to share this event with you and my colleagues, Mas Evan and others. I'm really sorry, Pak Terence and others. I'm really sorry. I have issue about the visibility of my computer here, but I think it's better if you all agree, go directly to the some message that I'd like to share here. I don't want to repeat about the success story that Indonesia has been enjoying over the last 1 decade or so, as presented by Ambassador. But I'd like to just to focus on several more into technicalities on how Indonesia would move or proceed forward. You may turn the page, please, if somebody could help me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, go on, Pak. I'm not gonna lecture everybody here. Everybody is already well informed about Indonesia.
Thank you so much.
Move on back, please. Yeah, okay. As you know it, and again, this has been touched upon by Mr. Ambassador earlier, that Indonesia as a sort of, we are bountiful of natural resources, as you know it, and I think that's why we've been complacent with natural resources. We've been living very enjoyable. We enjoy our life by just exploring our natural resources without putting too much added value into it. So if you look at in the perspective back in 2014, you see that we were like fully dependent on mining sector, right? Agriculture is there, but look at the coal, petroleum, gases, right, and other fossil fuel based commodities, and with some electricity, natural rubber, cars, and others, right, services is there too. But if you compare that to Malaysia, for instance, look, they have 16.32% of electronic integrated circuits, and Malaysia, I would say, has been very successful in expanding that industry in their country. So what I'm trying to say here, our economy over the last five decades or so hadn't yet put too many added values into it. So that's why, that explains why we are growing, but actually we should have grown much higher. We should have gone much higher. We should have been more sort of sophisticated in terms of our economic structure. But over the last couple of decades, we were just dependent on commodities. This is the thing that has been reviewed profoundly by Mr. Jokowi and his team before he entered into the office before 2014. And when he won the office, that was one of the, I would say, flag policies that has been pursued by Mr. Jokowi and his cabinet, which is transforming Indonesian economy to be more sophisticated, to be more complicated, so we're not going to be just dependent on commodities. You may turn the page back, please. Hello? Yes. So we call it as one of the transformational policy, if I may call it so, that has been pursued by this current administration, is that promoting rigorously our downstream policy on capitalizing our natural resources. For instance, we've been quite successful in transforming our nickel industry by processing it domestically, so that at this moment, until this moment, we have been successful in adding value to nickel to become steel, for instance, and that really propelled Indonesia's position worldwide on stainless steel production. So if you see the chart there, in 2021, before they've been able to export 21 billion US dollars to the world, and this only just the beginning of the whole policy on downstreaming our natural resources, because especially in nickel, as you know it, nickel is really required in producing electric vehicle, right? So if we may turn the page by some. Yeah. Okay. This is the chart that I like to add, that as a result of what we've already done in downstreaming. I'll come back to the downstream policy later on. Before we've been able to change the structure of our economy, so we'll less independent, less dependent on raw commodities. If you look at there, we compare from 2010 to 2020, there's a huge change in terms of structure of our economies, where we see there are a whole lot more process or a more sort of added value industries within the Indonesian economy. That's the sort of the result of the effort that's been done by the current administration. And mind you, it's just only started since 2014, so it's pretty fast pace that has been quite successfully being pursued by the government. Okay, we may go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say, that the more complex the economy of a country is, and the more the higher economic growth that we would expect, and that's what's happening with Indonesia. That's what we see why our economy, even though it is one of the few economies in the world that managed to grow over 5% per year, even after the COVID set in since 2020, right? As Ambassador already mentioned earlier. But actually, if we continue doing what we've been doing over the last decade, actually the growth should be like 7%. But we haven't been able to reach that level yet, because due to some issues like infrastructure. At the moment, we are having one of the most important infrastructure boom, I would say, in our history after Suharto's era. Even myself, I'm personally supervising the construction of one of the largest toll roads networks in the Southern Hemisphere, if I may call it so, because it's in Sumatra. It spans 2,700 kilometers of network of toll roads in Sumatra alone. So it's huge infrastructure project and creating a lot of added value, creating a lot of economic activities in Sumatra. And of course, we may provide jobs to the people. Around 200,000 plus jobs have been created directly by doing that project. Okay, we may proceed, Pak Sam. Thank you. Yeah, here we see the chart, as I said, by putting more complexities to our economic structure, we would expect that our economy over the next 5 years would grow at least 5.5, 5.18, 4.1, 5.7. But again, as I said, taking into account our potentials, we haven't been able to go to the 7% of growth yearly due to this infrastructure sort of hindrance, because the last time we had a big bang on infrastructure was during Suharto era, and now we are catching up. We're catching up. We're trying to finish all the planned infrastructure projects by the first semester of 2024. By then, hopefully the logistic cost, for instance, will be very much reduced because we have a more modern, more expanded network of toll roads, seaports, airports, and also as part of the downstream policy, Indonesia also is expanding its electric vehicle industry now, based on what we have, that is nickel. So our next objective in downstreaming our industry, natural resources industry, is by using nickel as the base of battery production. And before we started it, if you may continue the slides back. Before we started the battery, we may go on, but we may go on. We may go on, but okay. This is the status of our downstream policy, only in nickel. I would warn everybody. We've already managed to produce stainless steel, as I said, iron and steel. Exports to the world has been shooting very promisingly, but actually we haven't done the best part yet. That is using these natural resources to develop, I think, one of the largest EV industries in the world. That's our objective. And before this started, so the next objective of downstreaming this nickel commodity is by producing a battery cell and pack for EV. And we've been doing that with, of course, with foreign investors. But I should underline here that there are more and more local investors, DDIs, being involved in this chain of transformation. So I don't have the charts here. You may check what I'm saying here at the website of our investment agency, and maybe other more neutral sources like Bain agency and the other PwC reports, saying that we've already been able to track major investors from Korea, from China, and even my president already talked with the owner of Tesla in making Indonesia the base of EV production. And I guess what has been happening in the other part of the world, like in between Russia and Ukraine, which made the world is having issue on energy, and that always they also shoot up the price, so shot up the price of energy. Everybody's impacted. Indonesia is impacted, and you see, we saw some protests taking place in Indonesia, throughout Indonesia. We managed to that. It's part of democracy, but what I'm trying to say here, we have to reduce subsidy on energy, on fossil energy, because if otherwise the national budget would be deeply pressured, and that will hinder our efforts to continuously transforming Indonesian economy. That's why we are reducing the subsidy of energy, and this is one of the pulling factors for everybody, I guess, and for Indonesia, of course, principally that we will full steam go on to this electrifying our economy by having more and more electric-based mass rapid transport as well as private ones. So even starting next year, the government, if you talk about the government in Indonesia, you talk about 4.7 million of officials. So it's most like the whole Singaporeans are government officials in the Indonesian case. So that's why the president has issued a presidential decree obligating all the government offices to use electric vehicles starting 2023. It's already started as of we speak, but by 2023, it's an obligatory policy. So the senior and mid-senior government officials are not allowed to use fossil-based car anymore. We are even we've already had a cooperation with the Korean Hyundai here, which already has its first EV production line in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, and Jakarta, not far from where I'm speaking. So there's going to be very interesting opportunities for everybody first using this transformational process and its multiplier effect in the economy. Of course, there are a lot of business opportunities. Just to pick up one part of it is the expansion of electric refueling stations throughout Indonesia. We are already in that stage, but we still need more because well, we have at least 5 main islands that need to be taken care of in terms of expanding this EV infrastructure, so that we can be more reliable, or we can rely more on electric vehicle in terms of mass rapid transit and private transportation as well. Okay, next slide, maybe the last one. Okay, so other than before I would stop here, and I look forward to having a more two-way discussion, is that other than nickel, actually Indonesia has more. We have bauxite, we have copper, we have tin, which actually are also part of our rare earths. So and very frank, we haven't yet had how to say that, a comprehensive exploration and exploitation on the other natural resources that actually are there too. So we're just in the beginning of this very exciting transformational process in Indonesia, and I guess you know that would present opportunities by themselves without being questioned. The opportunities will be present by themselves, and I'm not talking about politics, but what has been done in terms of transforming Indonesian economy will be very much difficult, if there's any effort by any party in the next election to roll back what has been done by this current administration. I guess that will be very difficult. That will be very difficult because this transformational process, this transformational effort has paid off. We start seeing that like concretely on the ground. So it's very difficult to deny. And if you look at even, I don't have the chart, but if you look at the Indonesian trade balance, we recorded a positive, we recorded surpluses in our balance account. That's why, even though we are facing inflation pressure due to the energy crunch and due to the reduction of the subsidy. Our foreign reserves are still safe. Rupiah is being depreciated, but due to this inflation as well as the interest rate, Fed interest rate that has been hiked, it's not finished yet. They're still considering raising the interest for the next couple of months due to the inflation pressure in the US. But overall, compared to other currencies, Rupiah is still one of the sort of the safest bet in weathering these regional and global issues. So if you ask me whether or not we are the right place to invest, whether or not there are opportunities to invest in Indonesia, of course, and even there's no sort of limitation in terms of the time, because in the past it's always been related to, well, how about election? Would election change the course of what you've been doing? I guess it's already thing in the past in Indonesia. We are steaming forward, and it's very difficult to reverse that, no matter who would win the next election. And that's why I'm really optimistic that Indonesia is a good destination for you to do business. The last, and then I will stop here, is that Indonesia and Singapore is a natural partner, because Singapore has its position, Singapore has its capital in terms of technology, in terms of finance. Singapore has human resources, but at the same time, if you compare that to Indonesia, we have the natural resources, we have the market size, and growingly we have also human resources, qualified human resources. Maybe Bang Sam could testify what he's been going through in Indonesia, comparing from the first time he arrived until now, after a couple of years living in this country. That would be all for me as a starter before we have a two-way discussion afterwards. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Pak Ferry. Thank you so much, Pak Ferry. I believe your sharing provide us information on the renewable energy use, which has been the current focus on many countries, including Indonesia. And by the way, like you say, President Jokowi has initiated that all ministers will be using electrical vehicle to transform and promote EV industry in Indonesia. We will share more and we will talk more on the renewable energy during the Q&A session. Thank you, Pak Ferry, once again. Now I would like to invite Mr. Terence O, who's replacing Stanley Dooley, which couldn't make it for this webinar for some technical reason. He will share with us on navigating currency volatility with confidence. Yeah, Mr. Terence. So let me hand over to you, Mr. Terence, to share a presentation.
Thank you,
Mr. Terence.
This is a tough act to follow. I'm honored to be able to speak right after His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, Sir, and Pak Ferry. Some of you may remember me from last year's event and what a change the world has gone under. So last year, as we spoke, it was a completely different scenario. If you could send me the next slide, please. Last year when I spoke, we were in the midst of uncertainty, a world that was still suffering the throes of the global pandemic. We were seeing massive logistical issues worldwide. We were seeing disruptions in world trade, driven by the fact that certain major manufacturing centers of the world simply could not import or export, driving regional economies to source and find their own strength and their own sources of commodities, food, and other necessities. And that, in a way, promoted the idea that regionally, Southeast Asia needed to be an engine of its own sufficiency, and Indonesia was really well positioned to take advantage of that. Over and on top, I talked about some economic developments that included what sectors we felt we were bullish on, and investment in sectors like high-tech goods, in IT programming and consultancy, and service export out of Indonesia were topical for us. Next slide, please. 1 year later, not only has the world changed, but the company I represented has changed. So if you bear with me, let me spend a few moments here. Last year, I spoke as the head of dealing for Asia for Western Union Business Solutions. Since then, we have been procured by private equity, and we're now known as Convera. Having been bought in its entirety, we are now the world's largest non-bank B2B cross-border payments company, servicing over 30,000 B2B customers globally with over 500 international bank accounts. We serve 200 plus countries and territories, over 140 currencies. And in 2021 alone, we turned over US 170 billion in cross-border flows. So Convera is the giant in money movement that you have not heard of, maybe prior to today. We trust that you'll hear a lot from us going forward. Thank you. So next slide. Why do I focus on Fxnet then, other than the fact that it's my core business? Well, what the last 12 months have proven is that everything comes down to uncertainty and risk and the management of that. And especially with the inflation situation that we've faced and the various actions that governments worldwide have taken to combat inflation, the topic of interest rate hikes has caused huge amounts of volatility in exchange rates everywhere. So Pak Ferry mentioned earlier how the US Federal Reserve affects global currencies. Even tonight, we are expecting a meeting of the Federal Reserve where the market expects an 81% probability that the Fed will raise interest rates by 75 basis points. And a minority of 19% actually believes that the Fed will raise interest rates by 100 basis points. Now, that kind of drastic change in the Fed rate affects currencies everywhere. If you look at the first point, the dollar Sing, for example, has moved in an average range of 8.4% since 1983. And right now, dollar Sing is at, I would say, a 2-year high, driven by these inflation and interest rate changes. FX is a vastly complex topic driven by global growth, trade and policy expectations. What and how it affects us as businesses operating out of Singapore and Indonesia is the simple fact that FX moves are often very sharp, very sudden, and to the detriment of risk managers in our region, big moves in FX often occur outside Asian trading hours. Next slide, please. So why does FX matter to us? It matters to us because operating in a region like ours, we are all international businesses. Our businesses, whether we view ourselves as domestic only or international businesses with multiple operations across different nations, we are affected by FX rates, whether that be rate changes for renminbi for the manufacturing center of the world, whether that be rate changes in US dollars as we service our customers and export our goods overseas, even in a change between Singapore dollars and Indonesia rupiah, as you know, we see ourselves as Singapore investors investing in capital in Indonesia or receiving cash flow from our investments from Indonesia or vice versa. We are all subject to interest rate changes, and swings in interest rates and FX of this sort then directly affects us, whether it be our ability to report our profit and loss in our own home currencies, and whether it is in our ability to protect the capital of our investments overseas, or securing our cost base or income simply by protecting against interest rate fluctuations. And that's why we chose to speak about FX rates today. Next slide, please. the next 6 to 12 months are going to be really, really critical. I mean, I sit here talking about FX changes and interest rate hikes, but really the market doesn't have a crystal ball. So is inflation showing? Will tonight's interest rate hike be good enough to slow that down? Commodity prices are falling, but due to inflation, wage pressures remain. People need to be paid. People need to buy food, pay rent. So how does that affect your business? The problems of 2021 have not gone away. So supply chains remain problematic. China, for example, is still suffering lockdowns that affect the flow of goods globally. Shipping costs have fluctuated from a 10-year high last year to, whatever it goes to next month. And trading costs and the ability to control our cost base continue to fluctuate. With customers affected by highest interest rates, businesses affected by financing costs, demand both on a B2B basis and B2C basis will be pressured, bringing forward the dreaded R word, right? Do all these drastic interest rate hikes bring about a soft landing, or will we see a recession as usually accompanies these sorts of drastic movements? But be it that we have no crystal ball, let's not focus on the doom and gloom. Next slide, please. The complexity of interest rates, as I mentioned, and the effect of foreign exchange simply means this. If our revenue base is US dollar dependent, then increases in dollar Sing rate could be a positive for our business. And in one potential scenario, as the Fed continues to be aggressive, as China still suffers from the zero COVID policy, we could see continued interest rate hikes and the dollar Sing continues gaining. In a different scenario, US hikes slow as the effect of inflation control start to show, and the government goes from controlling inflation to reducing the risk of recession. That could mean a dollar Sing eases lower, but at a relatively moderate or slow pace. Or we see a strong economic recovery, a cycle where the US is knocked off its pace of growth and dollar Sing goes sharply lower. None of us in this room can say for certain what the outcome could be. We have to be aware that all of these are possible outcomes. Next slide, please. Similarly, while we have full confidence in the strength of the Indonesian rupiah as it stands today, as Pak Ferry has spoken about a little earlier, we can't ignore what are the upside or downside scenarios, especially when it comes to this Indonesia rupiah fluctuating against the Singapore dollar. So if the world economy, including China, slows, what is the impact? The impact is that Singapore dollar tends to remain strong against regional currencies in periods of slowing growth, and that brings one possible change in interest rates. On the other side, the Fed retaining its high interest rate policies can cause Indonesia rupiah to remain at a high level against the Sing dollars, and at the other end of it, global recovery of economies boosts emerging FX, and Indonesia rupiah is a beneficiary of that. Next slide, please. So doom and gloom, risk scenarios, uncertainty, which comes to the point of what I'm trying to say here. I'm talking to from the perspective of a Singapore business who has invested or is considering investment in Indonesia. You might have set aside project capital. You might have even identified project to invest in. I'm also speaking to importers, exporters, whether you are importing goods into Indonesia or out of Indonesia, we all are exposed to FX risk and do need to consider FX risk management. Next slide, please. Most importantly, none of us are novices here, and please excuse me if I do not acknowledge that all Singapore businesses have to operate in an extremely complex international environment and have some awareness of FX risk. So it's important that we have a consistent cycle, a plan with which to manage that risk, reviewing what works last year, what didn't, understanding what risk profile we want to take, because most businesses, I would assume, are in the process of reducing volatility and uncertainty in their earnings and costs, rather than simply speculating on possible FX changes. Creating a plan to exercise your view, whether that's reducing volatility or taking advantage of the changes, and then executing that plan and constantly monitoring the progress. Next slide, please. Because of the uncertainty of changes and the kind of time frames that we do, it is also important to take a rolling view of how you manage those risks. So the word hedge there, the term for essentially using instruments at hand like forward transactions and FX options to reduce your exposure to FX, those do not have to be all or nothing. One example that we put here is simply looking at your risk on a rolling 3-month basis, forecasting your needs and cash flow on that basis, and putting in a rolling hedge that controls your risk more fully in the short term, while putting a partial hedge in the longer term that gives you some protection without locking you on the wrong side of that transaction. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, there are several different situations and strategies you need to consider. You could have natural hedge to the FX positions because of simply the balances you hold and the nature of your cash flow and when you do conversions. You could potentially do forward transactions using today's rate to lock forward future cash flow, or you could use options essentially for the price of a premium, locking in your risk for the medium or longer term. Next slide, please. What is important and as a takeaway is that FX is volatile and unpredictable. This creates risks, but also an opportunity to ensure that you are not left holding the bag if your total sum of receivables or your cost runs against you. You need to have a plan for managing your FX exposure to help bring predictability to your cash flow and profits. You should make incremental regular changes to your FX management plan because markets will move and you need to retain some flexibility to take advantage of market movements. And remember, the FX provides a business opportunity, but risk management for any long-term business should be the priority. Next slide, please. Looking at international strategies, next slide. For international business, if your priority is managing currency volatility, the consideration here is, what if we continue to see interest rate hikes or geopolitics causes material shift in key exchange rates? A 5 to 10% shift could significantly affect your cost base. It could significantly affect the amount of revenue you think you're able to extract from your overseas businesses. Therefore, talk to us about a full range of trade solutions. We will help you understand, analyze, track, and mitigate the FX risks to protect your profits and optimize international cash flow. Next, please. What if your concern is how to manage global payments? Because we've seen that unexpected war declarations, for example, could bring about sanctions risk, and capital controls could suddenly escalate your exposure to regulations risk and reduce your ability to deal with international payment issues. Talk to us about our global payment solutions. Talk to us about our compliance controls and how our fraud prevention measures help to protect you. Finally, if you are exposed to import and export and highly exposed to global market trends, again, remember, we operate in over 200 countries and territories with 130 currencies and 140 currencies, and we can help organizations diversify into alternative markets and diversify into alternative supply chain. Next, please. And that is all from me today. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Terence. As you mentioned on FS risks, doom and gloom and uncertainty. I believe Convera has provided key takeaways to mitigate the risks and how you can deliver smarter money movement globally with Convera when you're doing international business and trade also. Thank you again, once again, Mr. Terence. You will join us again on the Q&A panel. Next, I would like to invite Pak Mario Wijaja, who will be sharing about labor impact towards new implementation of Omnibus Law Framework, which is very important and very essential on this topic. So, Pak Mario, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Shah. Thank you, SBF, Enterprise Singapore, Canberra, for giving me representing people to talk about the labor impact towards new implementation of Omnibus Law Framework. Okay. Next slide. All right. So I think I also would like to highlight what our Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary from the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Mr. Suryo Pratomo, also already share a little bit about our economic situation. And here I also would like to share a bit more straightforward to the post-pandemic situation in Indonesia. We know GDP, our GDP ranking is 16th from World Bank in 2019, and we are starting to have so-called a transformation, Industry 4.0, starting 2018, 2019. And actually, the Omnibus Law itself, or we call it, typically we call it a job creation law, that is put into effective in Indonesia in 2020. It has created a lot of movement, actually, from the economic perspective, from a lot of industrial perspective as well, and it brings actually a lot of stimulus also to all the businesses in Indonesia. Okay, and why it's very important? Actually, this Omnibus Law, you know, when it first released in Indonesia, there are so many. I have to say, it's very debatable. A lot of people talking about why this should be released during the pandemic situation. But you know the government, our president, Mr. Jokowi, part of the stimulus that is given by our Ministry of Finance during the pandemic, and also our president putting this Omnibus Law release in during the pandemic, actually to help all the businesses, and not just locally, but more into the foreign direct investment, for all the foreign investors to actually step and help the growth of Indonesia. So we know that during the pandemic, at least around up to 2.5 years, it's been very challenging for Indonesia. And of course, we are looking ahead. At least we will be having our election in 2024. And of course, this whole thing with the Omnibus Law takes in place actually helps a lot of businesses to recover faster and to build a better environment for the community, for the local players, and including when we talk our connection, our relationship, especially with Singapore. It's been very, very a great journey that this Omnibus Law supporting a lot of foreign investors to actually feel more comfortable, to invest in Indonesia. So when we look at our income per capita, we are targeting by 2036, it's about in around $12,233 billion. Okay, next slide, please. So, so before actually talking about labor, I also here would like to highlight that the investment realization in first quarter in 2022, actually, in fact, Singapore has been, the #1 players that has put a lot of investment in Indonesia. And we also having a lot of demographic by region investment. And you can see that, of course, the major is still in our current capital in Special Territory of Jakarta. But actually, also as Mr. Ferry shared that, you know, when we talk about our natural resources, when we talk about infrastructure development, we need to have more and more supportive cooperation with a lot of foreign investors and local investors as well in a lot of other regions in Indonesia. So we're talking in Sulawesi, in not just in Java, but also in Sulawesi, even in Borneo, in Papua. And if you look at the sectors that most of this investment takes place, you know, mostly, of course, we are focusing currently in building the infrastructure. We are focusing on realizing and utilizing more on our natural resources in Indonesia. And at the end of the day, of course, it should give a better living and better economic situation, not just for Indonesia, but of course, through the whole Asia Pacific and globally through all the world. Okay, next slide. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about how and why omnibus law framework takes in place in Indonesia market. So we know that this omnibus law or this job creation law, I mean, from the name itself, we need to understand and we need to have an alignment here that actually this policy, this framework helps and support all the foreign investors who would like to start their business, who would like to have their operation. And of course, it's not just about having your legal entity in Indonesia, operating in Indonesia, but of course, it's how Indonesia can open up its market to the whole world and being part of the whole world development. Okay, so you know, when we talk about investment, we can divide your direction, whether you want to play in a green field or a brown field. You can always create a new business creation. You can do some business development. And of course, by having that, definitely it will create a welfare and many of the job creation. You know, we have a lot of sectors in Indonesia that really helps, you know, the surrounding environment. And of course, it's opened a lot of new job creation around the region. When we talk about mining, manufacturing, land infrastructure, and all those industry, this will help not just on the business side, but of course, it could help Indonesia, you know, to actually bring more opportunity to its people, and not just to its people getting job, but of course, with having some cooperation with the foreign company, we can always have a sharing session. You know, we can always learn from others. We can always see, like, for example, if a foreign investor, they go and come in Indonesia, we can learn from them, what's good from them, and what needs from our side. Of course, we as a local people, we probably would have a better understanding about the culture in Indonesia, about how our people works, about how things works in Indonesia. And I think this collaboration between, you know, the local people with the foreigners, this is something that we need to take it as a positive response. So again, when having those welfare creation with this omnibus law, we would expect to have an increased income. And by having this increased income, we would also expect to have a more purchasing power for all the people. And by having that, it will bring more consumption and the production, and it will be part of the whole cycle of the investment and business development in Indonesia. So again, this is something that you know, in my opinion, it really helps not just for us in Indonesia, but especially for everyone. Okay, we help everyone to get to come to invest in Indonesia, and with this framework, actually, the government, our cabinet right now, try to ease the process. Just like His Excellency mentioned, that currently we have centralized all the registration for the investment in our online single submission system that is now takes in place in Indonesia. Of course, from the coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs as well, they have been supporting with the easiness for, say, for example, like for expatriates, you know, to getting a business visa, to getting a work permit in Indonesia. And this whole situation, it creates a better and conducive environment for those foreign investors to come and seek good cooperation and investment in Indonesia. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I think I might not go into the details, but of course, this is some highlights about the labor impacts of Omnibus Law. And we can go into the details one by one. And I think, of course, on other session, if you need any consultation, we are more than happy to share with you. But I would like to take this session an opportunity to let you all understand that what this Omnibus Law or this job creation law have in place. We are talking more into the labor impact, like for example, the RPTKA requirements. Now, if you see, it is more straightforward. I have to say it's more simple, and it helps all the local company to have a more good cooperation with a foreign company. And when we talk more regarding the local employment policy, we're talking about the employment agreement policy. We're talking about, for example, it's very technical. We're talking about how overtime pay should be done. And I think when we also talk about how you actually want to maintain your labor, and of course, this would impact and give a positive idea for all the foreigners and foreign investors to actually help and support their business in Indonesia. So again, with this Omnibus Law, the labor impacts is, I have to say, it's very positive. And you know, right now, more and more foreign investors, and especially because we are talking now under SPF, you know, a lot of Singaporean-based company, they come into Indonesia, they would like to have a bigger opportunity, a larger market in Indonesia. And with that, of course, they need to have support from the local people to be part of their team. And with this Omnibus Law, once again, it will give a more conducive situation, especially, you know, I usually talk with the HR people, you know, with the organization development people, with the management, with the business owners. So we, as the part of the government of Indonesia, with having this Omnibus Law, it will give, again, an assurance for all the foreign investors, you know, to have a conducive, and of course, we want to have a successful business coming in Indonesia and Singapore, of course, and throughout the whole region of Asia Pacific, and we talk in a large, more scale globally. So this is part of a thing that we is also very important. So when we talk about the business expansion, when we talk about, just like Pak Ferry mentioned, a lot of new opportunities in Sulawesi area, and region. We also need to understand how your business would need to have a good understanding about how the employment in Indonesia works. And that is a part of this omnibus law, actually this job creation law, to help you, to give you a better condition so that you can focus on your core business. You can focus on your business development. And maybe some people say that, yeah, but this is something that probably not really good, I believe, you heard a lot of things going on in Indonesia, maybe some, some demonstration from the labor in Indonesia. But again, this is a process, and this whole process, I believe, it is for the sake of everyone. And we are not taking this into some specific area of discussion. I mean, of course, we are not representing like any political party. We are not representing any special, needs from certain groups. But what I always see is that whatever here that is already being pursued by our government, I believe this is for the whole positiveness of Indonesia. And of course, our relationship with Singapore is very, very good on the region coverage itself, on our market expansion itself, and all the labor that is being employed by all of the foreign company in Indonesia. It's we need to understand them, and that is what this omnibus law takes place for all of you to have more comfortness, to focus on your core business. All right, next slide. Okay, I think that's all from me, very straightforward. But again, thank you for the opportunity from SBF, Mr. Sham, and for all the panelists and all the attendees. Once again, maybe if you need any further information, you can definitely contact SBF. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mario, on your sharing session. In general, Indonesia encouraging foreign investor to enter seamlessly and start running their business with the new omnibus law being implemented. And I believe people can provide the services and the support. And recently, we also hear from President Jokowi also had instruct the immigration agency to provide better services so that investor can enter smoothly. So thank you once again, Pak Mario. Next, we go to Mr. Kevin. We might overrun a bit. So last but not least, I'm inviting Mr. Kevin Ben Lawrence to share more about healthcare and pharmaceutical compliance and opportunity on post-pandemic. Mr. Kevin, time and place is yours.
Thank you, Pak Sham. Thank you so much, all the attendees, for the time. So my name is Kevin. I'm a director at the International Pharmaceutical Federation Foundation for Education and Research. So next slide, please. Yep. So I'm actually a NUS graduate, but I'm an Indonesian. So I came back to Indonesia to get my license. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this is some of my activities. I'm active in the international level, the regional level, and also the national level. So regional level, international level, I'm active, as mentioned, in International Pharmaceutical Federation Foundation. I'm also active in the Asian Young Pharmacists Group. Last but not least, I'm active in Pharmaceutical Society of Singapore. Next, please. Yeah, so I'm the first dual accredited pharmacist for Singapore and Indonesia. It's not an easy, there is a process. So I need to come back to Indonesia and get trained. So because there's a need for, as you have seen from most of our speakers, there's a need of localization. I think Indonesia, there's a lot of there is a difference. Not say the difference is good or bad, but rather it's just different. Indonesia is so huge. You're talking about a country with population 270 million plus. We have 17,000 islands. We have 300 over ethnic groups. So we call it suku adat. And that being said, so there's a lot of difference between Singapore and Indonesia, which brings us to this session where SBF is trying to introducing about the understanding about Indonesia, about the potential about Indonesia, and of course, how do we get into the Indonesia market? Next slide, please. Yeah, so this was I graduated from to get my pharmacy license last year, and it was during the pandemic period, so it was challenging, of course. But I would like to talk about some of the healthcare situations and also opportunity post-pandemic. Okay, next slide, please. So if we were to look at overview, Indonesia is about 276 million. It is a combination of, you have to consider Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand population all combined together, right? And if we were to look at healthcare, we are always talking about the people, because the market size depends on the people using the healthcare products, and it goes the same for many of the other markets. If you have got a big market, you have got a good foundation, you get a good base for growth, and eventually, as we all know, countries will reach maturity level. So it just is a matter of time. So if you are looking at Indonesia, it is at a very ripe age for you to consider doing business in Indonesia, investing into Indonesia, etc. And of course, not forgetting, if let's say we were to look at the GDP per capita, this is what determines, of course, how much spending power our population has. If you to look at it within the region, of course, if you were to put Singapore, Malaysia aside, Indonesia and Thailand will be the next. Of course, Thailand is attractive, but I will share a bit more about Thailand. Thailand is an aging population. So you're looking at Indonesia, because Indonesia is a growing population. We will be expecting population to hit 300 million in the next 10 to 20 years, possibly. Okay, and of course, we have to look at the healthcare spending. Healthcare spending is growing. Yeah. And potentially, I think there was an article 1 to 2 years back that Indonesia's middle incomers are actually growing, and that makes it an opportunity for in terms of the healthcare expenditure, and how we can capitalize on that would be something that we could talk about a little more. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I was mentioning earlier about aging population. What does aging population mean? Aging population means looking at Singapore, Thailand, those are the countries with the low fertility rate. Low fertility rate means, you get more and more people who are older. Yeah, when you have more and more people that are older, that means basically the country is shrinking in size potentially in the future. But you look at Indonesia and you look at Philippines. Indonesia and Philippines are those two within the 6 countries that I mentioned within Southeast Asia. It is the country with fertility rate greater than 2.1. With that being said, if it's greater than 2.1, it is also the size needed to maintain the population size. If it's greater than 2.1, population will grow. So if you look at that, is Vietnam going to grow? It's in the middle. We are not sure yet. Thailand definitely not going to grow. Malaysia, it's in the middle. It's borderline. Singapore, definitely not. Right? Which is why I think Singapore has policies to actually have foreign talents, accepting having more policies to invite foreign talents over, etc. And yeah, so that is the interesting part. And with growing population, that means the potential will be very big, right? And that is the largest population within Southeast Asia. And if we were to look at the physician, we got 0.5. So actually, there's still a lot more physicians. If we were to look at developed countries such as Singapore, it's 2.3. So potentially, definitely you can grow, and the potential is there. And key medical conditions is very similar. We have a lot of chronic diseases or non-communicable diseases, because it's already starting to develop. Usually, those countries that are still developing, they will have a lot more communicable diseases, or we'll call like infectious diseases. That would be the big causes for death. But if you to see, right, in Indonesia, tuberculosis, of course, is still quite high, but it's actually at the bottom. It's not the top 3. So that being said, Indonesia is slowly moving towards the maturity stage in terms of healthcare, right, and also development as a country. That's some of the metrics that we consider. Next slide, please. Okay, now we look at the opportunities. So I'm going to create a very simple one, because these are actually the very easy areas within healthcare and pharmaceutical that we can actually enter. Cosmetics, herbal, and health supplements. Why do I consider this? Because those are the ones that require less registration, less rigorous registration. Okay, and of course, there are medical devices, cosmetic, herbal, health supplements, medical devices. If we to talk about pharmaceutical products per se, pharmaceutical products will require more registration. You need a lot of bioavailability study, you need clinical trials, etc. So in the case of cosmetic, herbal, and health supplements and medical devices, those are actually big and growing, and a lot of these are actually consumables and all things that are one-time use, or may not be, it can be driven by a lot of digital, like for example, cosmetics, herbal, and health supplements. Most of them can actually be sold direct to consumer. And considering the fact that Indonesia has a very, very strong e-commerce market, that is the potential that we can grow. Okay, so for cosmetic, we are the expected market size is going to hit 7.5 billion by 2021. So CAGR at 6.5 annually is a healthy number till 2025. And I bet with the potential for e-commerce growth and etc., basically you are considering a lot of potential. And of course, the registration isn't too complicated, as I think mentioned by many of the previous speakers. A lot of the registration process in Indonesia has already been simplified by online submission, etc. And that's basically making things easy, right? Making things more convenient for everyone. And of course, herbal products. Herbal products will be very interesting. In fact, next click, please. Yeah. At least 80% of the medicinal plant species in Southeast Asia can be found in Indonesia, whether they are native or introduced. So basically, if let's say to see Indonesia, right, plantation, everything, basically it is the farmers area. So you can get a lot of herbal products. And in fact, if you can grow it, there's potential for local use and also potential for export. Many of the herbal products that are actually being used and easily consumed by people are actually can be found in Indonesia. So that's the potential. By itself, the middle incomers and the low income people, they will consider a lot of herbal products. So that is their first stock usually. So that being said, the market size is about 1 billion plus, and it's growing annually at 15% CAGR all the way to 2050. All right. And registration, as mentioned, it is straightforward, all via online submission. Health supplement also is at valued at 3.2 billion USD. And of course, during the period of COVID pandemic, herbal products, health supplement products are actually growing very, very steadily. And that being said, the access to it is very important. You need to understand the market. You need to understand how to approach the market, how to market to the Indonesian people to drive the growth of the products. In Indonesia, I would say that, as mentioned earlier on, it's 17,000 islands. Every areas could be different. Like Java is quite homogeneous, but even that being said, the consumer spending could be very different. If you talk about Jakarta and also Surabaya, that's where the biggest consumers, the high spending are, right? But if you talk about Central Java, the spending spree or the spending habit could be slightly different. There's a need for a localized approach even for within Indonesia. It's not one size fit all for the whole of Indonesia. You need to have a different style of approach, right? Maybe for Sumatra could be a different style, but all in all, if you know how to approach it in that localized context, there is a lot of potentials. Okay. And of course, that being said, I mentioned about the medical devices. A lot of medical devices has gone into Indonesia, and Ministry of Health, who's handling the registration for medical devices, has of course made it a lot simpler by a lot of online registration. And that being said, you can actually access all the information in the Ministry of Health website or BPOM or equivalent of Health Sciences Authority website. You can get all the information. The information are very straightforward. You can get all the information. So yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. So that being said, Indonesia, as we mentioned, we have huge population for healthcare. You know, sorry, not a huge population. We have very huge population, and the potential is not just limited to products. The potential is also in the human resource. You see, if you look at the surrounding countries, Indonesia is actually the one that's growing, and of course Philippines, right? If you realize these two countries are actually exporting a lot of human resources, right? That being said, you know, even in Singapore, we have a lot of healthcare professionals from other countries. So potentially in the future, we might be seeing a lot more healthcare professionals from Indonesia to be sent overseas, be it nurses, midwives, etc., because we have the population to support the healthcare. In case of aging population like Thailand, they're actually having a lot of nurses, maybe healthcare professionals from Cambodia, Myanmar, Vietnam. That's also possible. So because that's how they can actually sustain. Because if you're aging, that means population is just shrinking. You need people to support the old people, right? In Indonesia, it's not the case yet. So which is why actually Indonesia is at a very good stage for growth, and healthcare and pharmaceutical is likely to grow very, very rapidly in the next couple of years, and especially driven by by COVID pandemic and any other pandemic. And that being said, I think there's one important point. If let's say we have to talk about pharmaceutical product, Indonesia is one of PICS country. So PIC certified, meaning that the country can export to other PICS country. PICS country could include Europe, etc. There are European continent and many other countries. So as a matter of fact, Indonesian vaccines can be exported to Singapore and etc. Yeah, so that's a lot of potential, right? And that being said, in the pharmaceutical area, Indonesia is actually quite unique because we have quite a lot of high tech, I would say high tech generic manufacturers. Biopharma per se, the leading vaccine manufacturer in Southeast Asia. And also we have the top players, Kalbe, Sanbe, Dexa. They're actually producing a lot of products, and potentially we have a huge pool of talents that can actually be able to support pharmaceutical companies or healthcare companies if let's say they were to look at Indonesia as a potential market, right? Next, okay. Next slide. Yeah, this slide. Capitalizing on the challenges create further opportunities. I mentioned a lot about opportunities, but of course there are challenges, but the challenges are actually opportunities also. Look at health literacy. Health literacy is actually known as a silent killer. Health literacy is about how people know about healthcare. So most people, in fact, WHO has mentioned that health literacy is an issue, especially during the COVID pandemic. People, they just don't understand about the, people get worried because they don't understand the diseases. So as a matter of fact, low health literacy in Indonesia is, and many other developing countries, is actually a silent killer and a global public health concern. So actually, if we're to if there's a partner, or the way that companies approach in Indonesia is by improving health literacy, it will go a long way for the organization. It will actually improve the population's health literacy and create branding for the company. So companies that are interested to approach in maybe medical devices, health supplement, herbal, and also, as I mentioned, like cosmetic, you can approach by a lot of literacy, improving the knowledge, because when you improve the knowledge, you value add to the population, people remember your branding better. I think that is something that is really, really important. And of course, I think Pak Ferry mentioned about infrastructure. You know, Indonesian government has been pushing for a lot of infrastructure growth, and infrastructure growth is very, very, very vital for healthcare. Imagine, actually, if let's say people used to need maybe a few hours to get into the big hospital. Right now, for example, in the past, it takes 24 hours for people to travel from Jakarta all the way to Surabaya. With the current Trans Java, we can cut that by half to 50%. And in the future, with this fast train from Jakarta to Bandung typically takes about 2 to 3 hours. With the high-speed train, you could cut it down to 45 minutes. And that is fantastic. That's a huge support. And this infrastructure will create good access, be it for products to enter and to be spread across Indonesia, but also for healthcare service. Yeah. And of course, healthcare workforce, I think during this G20, there's a lot of discussion also because healthcare is a real hot topic. Many people are talking about healthcare. But bearing that in mind, G20 is actually an opportunity where Indonesia can capitalize, and there is a lot of exchanges. Potentially, they are discussing about how cooperation in terms of healthcare professionals training, and that particular thing could be capitalized, and that could allow greater successes and opportunities for Indonesia. Yep. So that's it for my side. I'll go on to the take-home messages. Next slide, please. Yeah. First, take-home messages. Yeah. Okay. So in healthcare and pharmaceutical, the biggest determinant for growth is actually population. Very important. Population. Population has to grow. Then the products can grow, and it goes for many things. Okay. By its population alone, Indonesian market is extremely attractive and lucrative. But do note of the challenges and how to capitalize on them. And of course, you need to capitalize on the opportunities also. And of course, find a good partner who has good insights of the market. If you have any question, please ask me, please ask Sham, please ask Pak Ferry. We are here to support. And of course, remember to reach out to Singapore Business Federation and the Indonesian government, because that is how you can create access. If you build more friendship, you build more networks, your network is your net worth, right? And that's how you can enter and capitalize on the Indonesian market. Okay, that's it for me. Kevin signing off, and wish you all the best for healthcare and pharmaceutical business.
Thank you, Pak Kevin. Don't sign off first.
Oh, okay.
Participating rate is still very high right now. So maybe we can share everybody on the panel right now. We can start a Q&A. So thank you, Mr. Kevin. We see that the health sector has driven many opportunities in this post-pandemic era and growing into maturity stage, as you mentioned. Singapore companies looking to venture into Indonesia, I can summarize that we need to think global but act locally, Pak Kevin.
Yes, you need to localize, and I think just now when I was sharing, I saw Pak Ferry nodding. He also agrees that the way to do business in Indonesia, you need to localize to just to each of the state. Each of the state or the provinces have different style of ball game, and you need to localize it. That's how we do businesses. I mean, Singapore is slightly different because it's an island country, but even how we approach certain message, maybe Yishun people, maybe the Pasir Ris people could be different, right? Yeah. So and Indonesia, if you look at it, the population is 50 times of Singapore. Yeah. So the potential
maybe
is
we can
greater.
start our Q&A right now. Thank you, everybody. So, Pak Ferry, first question to you, Pak Ferry. Based on your presentation, and we can see that renewable energy is essential for Indonesia economic growth. What is the current trend and regarding electric energy market? Is it leaning towards positive or negative? I mean, these are all hard questions from the participant, and we still have a good high rate participant on the ground right now. So we might kick off and end by 5 p.m. So, Pak Ferry, over to you.
Thank you. I do hope that I'm not found by the participants boring, right? As I said earlier, that this downstreaming policy has paid off, even though of course there are a lot of challenges. For instance, we are challenged by European Union that had been enjoying our low added value natural resources for too long time, right? So we're doing our business WTO DSM right now, dispute settlement mechanism. But never mind, we are opening our diplomatic channels now. But coming to your question there, again, whether or not this downstreaming policy works, I think it works, Pasam, because as I said, now look at the price of the gasoline or diesel, everything, right? It's shown up. Even people like me, like Pak Kevin and maybe others, Pak Mario, that actually we are middle class, we find it literally pressuring this price hike, right? But there's no other choice but reducing the subsidy, because we need that amount of money to be used in a more constructive and more contributing ways. The thing is, we have to make people understand. We need more political communication in this regard, just to be very frank. But if you don't do that, the impact will be felt like all across the board throughout Indonesia. So we have to full steam continuously moving towards electrifying our economies, if I may call it so. And actually people started being accustomed to using EV being using or riding a scooter, electric, right? It's even some of our local companies have already produced electric scooter, Pak Sam. Gesit is purely Indonesian. It's really affordable. But to be honest, my personal point of view, while of course we do need to expand electric-based personal vehicle, but I've already conveyed it to my bosses. Not only bosses that we need to go to MRT, because if otherwise, you would see traffic still. That's why, if I may add, our new capital would be fully electric-based transit system, right? It's going to
Public
be
transport, yeah.
yes. So even if I get the chance to live there in a couple of years to come, we're not allowed to have our own cars, because everything is within walking distance, Pak Sam. Everything is within walking distance. So we are only, as government officials, we are only entitled to an apartment, not any house, an apartment which is within walking distance to my office. So there's no need to drive any fancy car. So I think that's my response. Thank you.
I absolutely agree. I think public transport is something that Singapore has been running very well, which I think Indonesia is adapting to it. And of course, for investor, I think Hyundai, I mean, sorry to name the brand, but I mean they are well captured in the market, and they are one of the biggest one in Indonesia for automotive.
They're catching up, bro. They're catching up.
Yeah. But what I can see is that Singapore company can look into the opportunity for the EV bike. Yeah, I mean the motorcycle, sepeda motor. Yeah, it looks very promising to OEM and also collaborate with the factories in Indonesia. Maybe some Singapore company might be interested. Can talk to Pak Ferry later. Thank you, Pak Ferry. Next, we will go to Pak Terence. Pak Terence, talking about the market, FX risk, mitigation. What are some issues that company have faced with the changing condition market over the last few years? How they can, 10%, 5%, as you mentioned, is a huge amount. We're talking about big value. So how do we mitigate this very well?
Yeah, okay, so let me apologize for speaking in generalities because it's not Indonesia specific. I think the last few years brought a few surprises. Two surprises for companies involved in cash movement like myself. The fact that companies faced unexpected disruptions to cash flow, right? When international logistics got disrupted, when lockdowns occurred, goods do not flow. Companies run on the forecast of cash flow. Companies run on financing that depend on that forecast. Company run on credit from finance institutions that kind of depend on that steady movement of cash to continuously fund operations. So when all that gets disrupted, not only do we see trade disrupted, but companies literally find themselves short of cash and on the precipice of going, well, bankrupt. And that has occurred in many situations across the region. So for especially a company like ourselves that help to manage the cash flow, there comes some very difficult discussions. On the one hand, we need to help our customers, who are the companies moving these funds, to continue their business. But in order to do that, we then need to build trust in these customers by understanding actually what the real finances are, what the real income statements, balance sheets are, what are upcoming invoices that need to be paid, what are the reasons for disruption of that cash flow, and then using our own credit facilities and balance sheets, almost like a bank, to help these companies. So why don't these companies go to banks? Well, of course they do. There are certain countries where, like Singapore, where the central bank provided cheap funding to corporate banks in order for the banks to filter these down to companies operating there. What we do over and on top of that, offer uncollateralized facility to companies that we trust that further free up those credit limits and therefore allow the companies to redirect their resources using debt funding and financing for other purposes than simply just paying invoices.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I think for Convera Anybody interested in invest into Indonesia can call Convera and give full support, yeah, Pak Terence, yeah, in terms of the risk and mitigation for the company. Thank you, Pak Terence. Moving to Pak Mario, omnibus law, very interesting topic. We know, to do the business incorporation in Indonesia has been a bit different. There's a positive list right now. Pak Mario, to your question as from Bipo, what do you think? Should company who just started operation in Indonesia, should they do outsourcing labor, or they should do direct employment?
Very interesting question, Pak Syam. Thank you. So I think it's a question for many of the companies who would like to go to, actually not just to Indonesia, probably when they want to, expand their business overseas, they always look at, hey, should I take care of everything, or should I just outsource whatever that I can outsource, of course, to the service provider in that company or in that country. So I think to answer that, it is really a question of back to the company strategy. But most of the time, I have to say, majority, most of the time, usually when a company, they want to enter an overseas market, they want to focus on the business development. They want to focus on doing the market research. They want to focus on getting the right and understanding of how the policy, how the business works in that specific country. And of course, outsourcing is part of a journey and part of a solution, where actually these outsourcing kind of services, we're talking not just an employment outsourcing, but we're talking a lot of things: administrative outsourcing, payroll outsourcing, any kind of things that you can outsource. And actually, these kind of things is actually really supported by the Indonesian government. And why we are here now, actually, this is part of the thing that we would like to give, those investors who would like to come to Indonesia, so that they can focus on what they need to do, So I have to say, based on my experience and based on the data that I got, majority, if possible, and if it's allowed by the government and supported by the government, I think outsource many things of the nitty-gritty, a lot of administrative and those kind of things that probably a lot of foreign company might not have a good understanding. Say, for example, it's very simple. I often get a question like this: hey, Pak Mario, if I would like to hire someone in Indonesia, but then, maybe I don't feel like I have the chemistry with this employee, then maybe I don't like him or her, then I would like to terminate this staff, how is it gonna be, So, it's very often, and I think it's very practical, this kind of simple question, but it could raise to a lot of other questions related to employment, related to, policy, related to whatever kind of thing that actually, those new businesses, those new investors that actually need to focus on, they might get distracted with this kind of thing. So that's why as many as possible, if you could outsource the thing that maybe more administrative and you don't have a full understanding first of the content, I think it's a best solution. And of course, along the way, you learn, you have a 1 year journey, 2 years, 3 years on Indonesia, then you learn that if you think that you are able to manage by yourself, then it's okay. But again, the whole thing is that from a business perspective, at the end of the day, it's profit and loss, right? Yes. Whether you want to spend your time looking at things that you might need, to spend, not just financially, but you need to spend your time, you need to spend your effort, but rather than, letting those professionals that actually understand the local things, that's the way it goes. So I think, I hope it's answered the questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak Mario from Bipo. I think this is the way, by outsourcing, you can streamline your cost efficiency for your cash flow, your business operation. Yeah, Pak Mario. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pak Terence, we have one question. Company who are interested to go into the Indonesian market, should they open a US currency account or rupiah account? Wow, interesting. What is your thought on this?
All right. This is a difficult question that requires a sit down because there are two things, right? You have to, I mentioned earlier, there's such a thing as a natural hedge. So the natural hedge comes from your day-to-day operations, what currency you are likely to accumulate. And therefore, if you accumulate that currency, what direction those reserves tend to take in relation to the market. Now, the market means nothing unless we know what currency you're operating in. If you're a Singapore company, are you a US dollar denominated company reporting all your income statements and P&L in US dollars or in Singapore dollars? Then the conversation goes from there. So there's no ready answer. Please reach out to me after the conference if you want.
Thank you. Please, I think for this question, this person can reach out to you later. Back to you, Pak Ferry. Pak Ferry, as we know, the renewable energy is growing very aggressively. And recently, from BKPM, Ministry of Investment, Pak Bahlil has mentioned that it's focused more to the local market rather than going to export out the renewable energy. So is this going to impact the economic growth or next year? I heard around the news that Indonesia is ready to export out their renewable energy, from solar energy.
No, actually, it's it's the sort of economic political dynamics in Indonesia, right? If you, to be honest, I forget the law, but actually by law we are allowed to export electricity, right? There's new law about it, but the thing is, as a country as big as Indonesia, there's have a lot of ideas, right? A lot of issues, a lot of dynamics. So some people find it quite challenging. Why do we need to export renewable energy abroad? While actually we do still have some villages that even are not supplied by the electricity in Indonesia, which is the fact, right? So this kind of conversation continues, and of course that goes from the highest echelon down to the lowest one. So that's the dynamics I would say. But in the near future, Pasam, I don't put that how to say that but idea off the table, because look, PLN needs to make itself more efficient. PLN needs to manage energy supplies, especially electricity in Indonesia, in more modern and more transparent and in a good governance manner. So I don't take it off the table. I don't take it off the table. And actually, if I may Pasam, this is off my presentation. I'd like to relate to what Pak Mario said. Actually, with regard to the labor issue, we, with my deputy, right now are working with the Office of Immigration. So we're trying to put we're trying to implement what President Jokowi has already said a couple of weeks back regarding how we, how our visa regime is being done over the last couple of decades, right? So we're trying to improve that. No, seriously, actually, the meetings was supposed to be taking place today, but it's postponed until Friday, and I'm part of that effort. So basically, I want to share some hints here that we're trying to make our visa regime a more open, a more modern, more options, so investors, professors could have better access to Indonesia in terms of their length of stay, their rights, right? So it's still an issue until as we speak. So that will be my additional comments on what Mario already said. Thank you.
Pak Ferry, thank you so much. I'm there for 8 years. I understand for the visa, everything, the protocol. So really appreciate, and hopefully there's some good news coming out and positive outlook later. Thank you so much, Pak Ferry. Talking about visa, Kevin, doctors is not easy to practice foreignly in Indonesian market.
Yes.
So with this, you're telling about workforce where nurses, midwife, there's a big opportunity for them to work in overseas. I think Dubai is getting them.
It's huge. It's huge.
Them. So do you think, in Singapore, there's opportunity for them to become as a trainer, because we are good at training people?
Yeah. Actually, last a couple of months back, I visited Singapore on a Singapore Pharmacy Congress event. So the chief pharmacist of Singapore hinted me, Kevin, how about looking at having pharmacists from Indonesia potentially work as an additional workforce in Singapore, potentially, and also other healthcare professionals. So as a matter of fact, if let's say there are Singaporean companies who are very interested in doing educating healthcare professionals, or having the hard skills, be it not just healthcare professionals. As a matter of fact, if let's say there are universities or any training facilities or companies that are interested to enter Indonesia, actually Indonesia is very, very good market for leveling up healthcare professionals, human resource, which at the end of the day, this human resource can be sent overseas. In fact, I have a lot of requests also coming from Japan. Japan is a aging population, right? And as this client, potential client of mine has reached out to me, how about looking at sending some of the workforce over to Japan? That's potential, but very with something that we can definitely look at. And that being said, I think if let's say other countries, countries practitioner want to enter Indonesia, they need to be localized. Just like how I went through, there's a lot of huge difference in terms about the way things are being done overseas, because Indonesia is a huge market as per se, access of products, the way we do things. I can say, if let's say we are talking about surgeons in Indonesia, Indonesian surgeons are very good, very, very good. You know why? They have so many patients to practice. It's a hard skill. It's a hard skill.
Experience.
I've actually got a friend's husband who had this traffic accident in Indonesia. He did a surgery for the broken bones, and then went to Singapore again for review, a Singaporean. And the Singaporean doctor said, oh, if you were to do it in Singapore, I think this is also the level that I can do. It's because they have that experience. Surgical stuff, it's they just keep operating on people, and the best of the best in Indonesia, they are really, really good. And yeah, something that we can learn from each other, from both countries. Right?
Thank you.
The good practice in Singapore, the SOP, and Indonesia, some of the hard skills that they can learn, because they are trained, right? But of course,
before I go back to Pak Terence, Kevin,
yes.
maybe share on this matter. Bali recently set up
Yes.
a hospital on there. So is it belong to Mayo Clinic, or no, they work with a partner down there?
Okay, so the Bali, from what I understand, from the kind of like the release that Mayo shared, Mayo Clinic is actually a consultant and a partner, not as a investor. Okay, it's not an investing concept, because Mayo by itself is a non-profit organization. So they are not actively investing. They are not looking to expand overseas. But with Mayo as a partner, potentially there could be services, or there could be best practices from the US that can be shared with Indonesia in terms of running the hospital. And that market could be quite attractive. Previously, there was an Oliver Wyman paper that states that Indonesia lose 40 billion USD to medical tourism annually. So I think that's what the Indonesian government is trying to catch back. And during my experience was actually in a healthcare investment. So I used to manage one of the largest, my team and I managed the largest private healthcare facilities in Singapore, in the region. So what happened is that during those 2 years COVID period, right, basically there's a loss of income to private hospitals in Indonesia, in Singapore and Malaysia, and of course Thailand, because Indonesia is actually having a lot of this medical tourism. And those 2 years, actually, it's a huge gap. People start to change habit, and which is why there is actually an interesting viewpoint that, potentially the Bali hospital could catch back some of this middle or high-end kind of like medical tourists, preventing them from going overseas and staying in Indonesia. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Pak Kevin. I think we overrun. I'm so sorry. It's already 5:07, but amazingly, there's still a lot of participants. We will catch up again our second series. We have our second series upcoming on 26th October. And for those in the local market in Indonesia, Pak Ferry and Pak Mario and Pak Kevin, we would like to invite you to our networking event upcoming soon. And I will see Terence again on the second series. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Thank you to Pak Suryo Pratomo, Ambassador, Indonesia Ambassador to Singapore. I really appreciate all your time. To all audience, I hope the panel discussion can satisfy your curiosity. Of course, I hear some of the question on halal and I hear some question on business incorporation. Please do contact me. I will advise you accordingly and I will guide you accordingly how you can enter to the market and invest into Indonesia. There have been very seamless registration in Indonesia. Even the law stated in many ways, but you know the interpretation might be different. So do contact me, and then I will liaise according to the respective agency. And also, Pak Ferry, you know, there's a lot of opportunity in the EV buy. I mean, Bali is there going on, Jakarta is going on. I think there's more opportunity which we would like to discuss more later with you. So as for Bipo and Convera, thank you so much on all your support. I believe it's very important on outsourcing and also the risk mitigation of the FX. We need to be careful on that when we invest in overseas. Hopefully, our members can leverage on your support and the service. Next, we have come to the end of our webinar. I seek all your cooperation to pass in our last poll. Maybe we can share our last poll. On the final note, once again, we would like to thank you everyone to make this webinar a great success and see you on the second series. And please scan your QR code. You know, if you have any question on Indonesian market, Global Connect at SBF with our Indonesia office in International Financial Center Tower, will be great to assist Singapore companies to expand in overseas. We have office in Bangkok, currently in Vietnam and also Indonesia. And moving ahead, we have more offices in other countries. Once again, thank you to all our speakers, Pak Ferry.
Thank you, Pak.
Mario,
Thank you so much.
and
Pak
also
Kevin.
Pak Ferry,
Pak Terence, Pak Mario. Stay
Yeah,
safe. all.
Thank you, Pak Ferry. Thank
See
you,
you
Pak
again.
Terence.
See you
Thank you, Pak
soon.
Mario.
Take care.
See you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye
Thank you,
all.
Sham.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Take care straight. Thank
Bye,
you.
Sham. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all.